My name is Sema. I'm 24 and I work in finance as an accountant.
So how old were you when you came from Uganda, and why did you come to the UK?
It's been 6 years now actually, so I was 18 when I came from Uganda over to the UK. Came at the point when I was transitioning from GCSEs into my A levels. And I guess primarily that's the reason you'd say I came over, or at least in the eyes of my parents and my uncle and my auntie. Personally, I think I came over for my A levels and to try and have one last shot at pursuing playing football, which obviously has a much greater opportunity over here as opposed to back home. And based on the answer I just gave for my profession, you know what direction I went in.
How was it transitioning from Uganda to the UK?
I think personally transitioning from moving over in a very different living environment to the UK was made a lot easier by my auntie and uncle and cousins who I lived with at the time. They almost made it seem almost like it was nothing and gave me the opportunity to just spread my wings and go out there and learn as much as I needed to. In addition to all of that as well, I'm quite an open person. I'm willing to learn, not to try and make it sound like a job interview, but I'm willing to learn at every opportunity. And coming over here gave me the opportunity to meet new people, a new way of life, and to just find out new things in general, which I enjoyed and kind of climatized to quite quickly. I'd say it probably took me a few weeks to settle down in school, find a job, and just kind of crack on. And here we are, 6 years later.
Did you have any fears for moving from obviously back home to here?
I don't think I had any fears particularly. I think at 18, I was just full of excitement. I just wanted to kind of pursue a new opportunity. I was going through a very transitional period in my life as well. So coming here kind of gave me the opportunity to refresh, restart, and kind of explore things that I would have never had the opportunity to kind of deal with. And having kind of taken that by the scruff of its neck, sorry, I was not looking at anything negative. I just looked at everything in a positive light and saw how and where and if I could conquer anything that came my way.
Are you the only boy in your family? And is there any pressure on you that you're feeling right now?
I'm definitely not the only boy in my family. My family has quite a weird dynamic in the sense that on my mom's side, there's a fair amount of girls, but on my dad's side, I might get killed for getting this wrong, but I believe there's only two girls, which is my sister and my cousin, who happens to be in the UK as well. So from that angle, I don't feel that pressure in the sense of in an African home, there can often be the kind of old school mindset that the male, in quotation marks, is pressurized in being, in having to kind of bring the family out of its situation, as per se. But I think to give my parents credit where it's due, from when we were younger, there's never been that assumed pressure. I think my mum and dad did a good job at kind of making everyone feel as though they should just be the best at what they can be. And naturally it's kind of meant that all of us, me and my two older brothers and my younger sister, have been able to kind of pursue the different fields that we enjoy, kind of trial and error life until we got to the point where we are now. And to answer your question about the pressure, I think a lot of the pressure that I have is genuinely put onto me from me. And just to elaborate on that, it would be, for example, being the first sibling from my nuclear family to move over here. I felt as though it was my job to make sure I did really well, just so all my other siblings could see the opportunities that we have, that they could have as well, and come over. But none of my family has done me any kind of disservice in putting any sort of pressure on me from that perspective. No.
So how do you handle this pressure on yourself, coming from Uganda being the first in the UK?
There's two things I think. I know I mentioned my auntie and uncle those many times, but I'd be lying if I said I came here and just landed here like Superman and was able to just handle everything that was thrown my way. My auntie and uncle, kind of, just for some context, had been here for about 10 years or just above 10 years by the time I came. And they'd done an amazing job based on where they were compared to where they'd started. And every piece of advice that they kind of gave me, I took on board because it's almost as if they'd lived from exactly the point that I was starting in. I think kind of in combination with that, I personally am, as I said earlier, I'm quite good at transitioning in different environments. So I just made sure I applied that same kind of characteristic, which has taken me very far in a variety of things I've done in my life. And the combination of both, there wasn't really an opportunity for me to fail, I don't think.
Can you tell us on what is your biggest achievement so far?
Ooh, interesting question. I think my biggest achievement so far has to be getting the current qualification I have in accountancy. And even though that's not the funnest answer of all time, it's probably the thing in my life that I've had to work the hardest for. And I say that in the context of sacrificing time, putting in effort, kind of cancelling things that might have been fun at the time, and kind of working hard and seeing myself progress from stage one when I joined my company and looking at people who are at the end of their process and thinking, wow, is that even possible? To getting to that point and seeing people just joining, asking me, how is that possible? It kind of puts everything into context and gives you the opportunity to appreciate how, I wouldn't use the word lucky, but grateful that I should be, that I was kind of able to be in that position. And I mean, it's not a secret, I'm quite proud of it in the sense that it's taught me a number of things. But during this qualification, I had very many exam fails, which I then had to redo and pass. And I'll be the first to tell you that the disappointment that comes with an exam fail is out of this world. Mainly because I work for a company that kind of fires you when you fail an exam too many times. So there's a lot of pressure that's on your shoulders, but kind of being able to handle that pressure and overcome it to then subsequently pass an exam is something which I think I personally hold close to my heart, because I think it puts me in a better position at handling pressure than someone that potentially passed all their exams and might fail one in the future. So yeah, that's probably my biggest achievement.
What has been a major setback this past year?
I mean, depending on when you publish this, I think everyone, and my major setback has had to have been coronavirus. For reasons that are obvious to all of us. I've worked through the whole of coronavirus because I work in the services industry, which ultimately means we all got an email saying buy yourself a desk and a chair and just keep working. So that's what I've been doing. It's been different, very different. I laugh a lot about how it's great to wake up at 8:55 and not have to iron my shirt or get in the car and drive to clients, but it's hard in the sense that you kind of still have to perform at the same standard, whereas you're in a very different environment, which involved working in my room for a prolonged period of time. But away from that, probably something more personal to me would be at the start of the pandemic, losing my granddad and having to travel back home during a really busy time of the year for me. That was crazy. I think mainly because that was the first close family member I've ever lost in my life. So not really knowing how to handle the emotion, or never having had experienced that emotion before, while being able to still try and balance the work commitments I had and the rest of it, and also give support to my family as a whole, because that's the point in time where everyone really needs to come together. Yeah, that was a learning curve, but something we all have to go through at some point in our lives. So can't really take away from it any negative points apart from, ultimately losing my granddad. But he's a fighter, and kind of things that from that experience that kind of taught me invaluable skills and invaluable points about how family is probably stronger than anything else, and the concept of going back home and realizing that when I spend time with my family, everyone was the most important thing, not everything, in terms of we work so hard, and sometimes, especially working in the UK, you get really engrossed in trying to achieve targets and trying to get this qualification and earn this amount of money, and forget that when it boils down to it, all that stuff is kind of secondary to what's really important. And I say that because the positive that's come out of that is my family on my mother's side have become a lot closer from that experience we all shared together. And I'm now more engaged with my family members back home, my cousins. I'm going back home this December because I feel as though you can't take things like this for granted. It had been essentially 4 years since I'd seen my granddad before he passed away, and kept postponing my trips back home because, as I said, work. But when it boils down to it, that shouldn't have been my priority. So I think, yeah, that's been my major takeaway from that experience. And as for COVID, it's not finished yet, so I don't know what to do with that yet. We're gonna have to deal with that one when Boris lets us loose.
Have you had any significant challenges in your life so far?
Yeah, definitely. I think if I was gonna put a timeline on it, I'd say the most significant challenges I had were from 15 to 18 to just before I came to the UK. If you've been listening closely, I've been referring to a transitional period in my life, and that's kind of where it stems from, in the sense that the man I am now is very different to the child I was at that time. And just to elaborate on it, I was essentially a little shit, to be fair. I gave my parents a lot of headache. My brothers were very successful, and at the time they both had scholarships in a really good university over in Kenya. And I kind of used to look at my life and think, well, I'm going to be a footballer. I don't really need to focus on school. I don't really need to pay attention past class, which meant that I was continuously getting in trouble for not doing well, for not listening, for just being a nuisance. I remember my dad actually saying to me once when I was growing up, he got called to school for like the 300th time, and said to me when we got in the car, he said, "Sema, why have I never been called to school for something good?" And I still think about that today, because he was right, and he'd never been called to school for anything good. And I say that's a significant challenge, because if I hadn't been able to make the transition to who I am today, I genuinely know I wouldn't be sitting in this chair talking to you. And I also think that my life would have gone in a completely different trajectory. So that's why I think it was a massive challenge in being able to kind of wake up and think, do I really want this for myself? I'm 16, I'm 17, I'm not yet a professional footballer. Is it going to happen? Probably not. And that's a really tough conversation to have. Just yesterday, there was sad news about the Manchester City academy player that took his own life because his contract at Manchester City was terminated and he was released from the club. And as an ex-sportsman myself, I know the feeling, in the sense that your life is just sport and you don't think there's anything away from it. And the moment you realize you can't do sport, a lot of people can't make that transition to realize whatever, if there's anything else they can do. So I'm glad that God gave me the opportunity to see that there was something else for me, and here we are now.